So let me tell you a story. Hello, I'm Emperor Tiberius Fox, Ty Fox, or more colloquially known at times as Man with Hat. However you don't happen to know me is irrelevant for this story. What little background on me I will give you is that I have been playing Final Fantasy XIV for over 10 years. I'm not a hardcore raider or a hardcore anything for that matter. People who have watched my channel know that I've been going back through the main story quest of Final Fantasy XIV for enjoyment, and I enjoy the world for all the little things that it is and have been for a long time. This, however, is a story about friends who have over time had tastes in games diverge so much that we rarely even agree on what's good, let alone what to play together. It is through the endeavors to play together as we grow older that we find ourselves in the predicament to begin with. I wasn't even going to originally make a video like this. This is actually the first of its kind for me. Don't get me wrong, I've watched my fair share of video essays where people deconstruct a game, but I didn't even have the draw to do that. At first I was just going to tell the friend who had gotten me into this in the first place why it wasn't working for me. And then I thought, perhaps I'll just write a small piece about it. But after that I just felt more and more compelled to make it sort of a presentation. So, here we are. I had originally, when writing this, had this large overarching backstory that explained everything from who is playing what to what we like to play and how we got here. I realized, though, that it didn't really do anything to help the story I'm trying to tell. So, instead, here's the abridged version. I have two friends. We'll call them Jif and Bastion. Bastion has long implored Jif and I to try WoW, as he and felt many of the games that we already enjoyed had much in common with WoW, especially WoW Classic, a favorite game of his. I had played many years ago during Cataclysm, while Jif never had. We initially rejected the prospect, but after further consideration we decided to give the effort an old college try, and decided to start playing. First myself, then Jif a week later. So before we tackle all the frustrations and the things about this that I don't like, let me tackle a couple of things I really liked about the game. Things I think modern games have lost, and especially Final Fantasy XIV. First off, I like the questing structure when it comes to friends. A lot of games will treat you as separate but equal, having to have you separate to do certain things. WoW has you able to do every quest I've experienced as a group. You work on tasks together and as a matter of course rather than out of a matter of happenstance. Secondly, I like that the world can feel dangerous. Final Fantasy XIV has its moments of danger, unless you wander into a dangerous zone or you're underleveled for, or a boss fight. You are rarely challenged by overworld threats. This makes the world needing your influence more real because the threat is real. Beyond those, though, let's continue and jump in. I would structure my argument in what I would call the 4 pillars. With all the background out of the way, which will probably still has more holes in it than Swiss cheese, we move on to the meat of the story, the critique. I would boil down the gripes I have with WoW Classic to 4 pillars, one being more of a flavor and the other 3 stem from more concrete designs than personal preference. These would be the combat, the story, questing and pacing, and socializing. Well, let's go ahead and tackle the first one, which I would call the flavor one, the one that's more innocuous, and that's the socializing. In Final Fantasy, I've spent the better part of a decade playing alone or with friends from real life. I generally don't trust people, and I tend to keep them at arm's length. I can use Party Finder to dip in and out of content, say hi or a little wave to emoji thing, and do the content. I don't have to discuss anything unless I want to know if there's a mechanic I need to know for the fight. WoW borderline requires that you communicate to others and form parties and take down enemies of larger strength in the wild. At face value, this is fine. I even like the prospect. The problem is, for it to be effective, it has to be mandatory the way it is. The thing is, if I've had a long day, I don't want to talk to people and have to discuss details. I just want to go questing, do a dungeon, and move on. Final Fantasy has socializing, but allows you to choose when you do the socializing, not mandating that you do. If you're like my friend Bastion, this is fine. Great even. If you're like me, or Jif, and you're just more selective about the social aspect, that sort of gameplay style isn't encouraged in WoW Classic. This is a flavor thing to me, which is why I wanted to get it out of the way first. It's a huge component, but again, flavor, and one I'm not fond of. Point 2. The combat. I'm fully aware that as of the time of making this, I'm only level 15. That and perhaps someone could argue that Priest isn't the most interesting to play, especially early on. Though I will fully admit that the reason I even am playing Priest is because none of the classes looked super interesting to me, so I just went with my next default, which is helping people, because I enjoy that, and so I decided to start a Priest. That said, I have watched people play a lot of Paladin, and I've played Hunter myself. Speaking specifically from Hunter, that wasn't terribly interesting for me either. Let's look at the difference. Conjurer, in Final Fantasy XIV, becomes White Mage, doesn't have a huge toolkit by the time you first hit a dungeon either. You've got your attack, your damage over time, healing, and your res. The thing is, while having to learn your class in this context, you also have to learn the dungeon mechanics, party mechanics, avoid telegraph attacks, positioning, boss patterns, and what is expected of me on the run. While it's gotten less complex in modern day, there's still a lot of it there. What it boils down to is 14 gave me more reasons to be engaged. Meanwhile, on level 50 on Priest, the only time I feel engaged is when something goes wrong. A friend overextends, pulls too many enemies. Do I shield? Do I heal? What do I attack? How do I juggle these things? These moments are few and far between. 14 has me doing these things far more frequently, at least in my perspective. So one thing I don't want to do in this video is just make a 100% apples-to-apples comparison with Final Fantasy XIV. I think there are other elements that can really be discussed, so allow me a couple parallels. WoW's combat design of reading a room and looking at how to pick it apart reminds me a lot of the devs in Halo 4 and their early Vidocs, and how proud they were of their encounter design. They would look at the Prometheans, with the Crawlers, the Knights, and the Watchers, and say things like, what do I deal with first? And they thought it was this great decision-making moment to keep players engaged. The problem was, it wasn't. Everyone just killed the Watchers first. When you have an enemy that can die in a single headshot, an enemy that can kill you instantly sometimes and that is a damage sponge, and an enemy that can bring in enemies and revive them, you kill that one first. I would say that if you wanted something more tactical, I would play something like XCOM, where you have all these little pieces I've put on the board, so to speak. What you bring, positioning, cover, what you kill, and what order is incredibly important. There's a wide variety of enemies on the field with strong, impactful abilities. There's choices to be made and interesting ones. WoW and the engagements I've had thus far are questions that have already been solved as soon as we see them, which again, just isn't engaging. Point 3. The story. Going from Final Fantasy XIV to World of Warcraft was a culture shock for the story, or perhaps you would rather say, my perceived lack of one. 14 has you at the center of the story. Granted, that's probably its largest selling point. It's more than that, though. 14 has you directly interacting with people and having face-to-face dialogue, sometimes a voiceover in which that dialogue is the focus. Then through that dialogue you are given tasks, or at least the direction in which you will be going. Characters are memorable because the dialogue they reveal their personalities and sell to you the importance of the tasks you are doing, and unfold as to why. Meanwhile in WoW I find myself talking to NPCs constantly. Due to the way that WoW delivers the story through what equates to what I would look at as a pop-up, I forget what they said by the time I finish the quest. It's completely unengaging. I couldn't tell you the name of a single one of them thus far. Let's make the secondary comparison to Blizzard's own making. Diablo 2 drops you into a rogue camp. You can tell by the atmosphere that things aren't going well for them. You saw the opening cutscene which set the stage and did a lot to hook you, but when you finally talk to these people, there's not a lot being spoken. That said, I could tell you more about all the characters in that camp and a lot of the others that you meet elsewhere. Charcy is the blacksmith of the town. She's capable and tries to remain optimistic and kind, especially with everything going on and what went down right before you arrive. Akara is a priestess and is trying to keep everything together despite being launched into the horrors that have befallen the area. She's clearly as happy that you're here and happy to guide you, especially as you start making headway. Kasia is the captain of the guard and is a little apprehensive of you early on. She clearly doesn't want another adventurer coming in causing problems, but she's lost enough people trying to secure the camp and on excursions, so she can't turn away help. She grows more appreciative of you as you succeed in the area. Granted, the story has some voice dialogue which helps, but for a game of its age, I can tell you what's going on and why I'm doing what I'm doing at any point in that game. I can't really say the same for WoW and its pop-up style dialogue delivery. When thinking about all of this, I was speaking with Jiff at one point about all these critiques and asked him what the friction was for the game for him, why he thinks it wasn't grabbing him. Instead of him, though, he spoke for me, which was striking. He pointed out that Warcraft as a world, he said, you have to like Warcraft to like this game. You have to want to live in Warcraft. If you were in, say, World of StarCraft, you'd probably be having a far better time. My mind immediately went to the imagination of being a StarCraft Marine or a Zealot, and being told a local outpost is being overrun with Zerg, and how I was needed to repel the incursion. I was instantly excited, and then I came back to reality and realized that wasn't the game I was playing. And that beyond the missteps of the story, the world itself and what it was showing me did nothing to grab me in the same way that these other universes did. It did nothing to spark my imagination and draw me in to want to inhabit it. Point 4. Questing and pacing. Of those two, let's tackle the outlier, so to speak, of the two first. Pacing. I feel like everyone in life has at some point been asked to try a game, or at least asked someone to try a game. And while the introduction is taking place, the experienced player kind of carries the new player through without intending to. This doesn't mean they remove challenge, it just means they remove the excitement of discovering something new. While trying to figure out why it wasn't exactly clicking for me, I went and read up, and while looking into what people were talking about with WoW Classic, the true joy of the game comes from starting out in a world you know little to nothing about and exploring, getting lost, dying, and growing in that atmosphere. I have not had this experience. Since moment one, myself and later Jiff have been following Bastion around. This affects the story, but also the exploration, because I'm just following all the time. One of the things early on that I had in the background that I removed was that during the time that Warcraft 3 came out, I played it and I really didn't like the change in the art style. I liked Brood War and Diablo 2 and all that stuff, and then they changed with the 3D models. They went to, the style that Warcraft 3 and ultimately World of Warcraft went with. I don't care for the style. I don't like the way it looks. It does nothing for me. I actually think it kind of looks ugly, but generally speaking, I can try and get past that. But if you really don't like the art style you're looking at all the time, you're not really inspired to wonder. You don't go, what's over there? I really want to explore this. This looks really cool. It looks really interesting. And when you don't have those moments, you don't really want to do it. So you lose that large part of the motivation loop. When you pair this with following a friend who is trying to show you the ropes, you kind of find yourself just going through the motions. The story suffers because I end up skimming dialogue to not keep my friends waiting. We end up traveling from place to place, killing predetermined amount of enemies for reasons I'm not super aware of. And that said, I have tried to run quests on my own, but there is so much friction in WoW's design that I continue to stall out. If I had to be 100% candid, the largest gripe I can say is that from my perspective, WoW Classic is a game that does not respect your time. It's not that I require that everything go fast, but I need purpose in what I'm doing. For yet another point of a different game's contrast, let's look at a game like Elite Dangerous. Elite is more about travel and exploration of an unforgiving world than most games. I, not too long ago, took a trip to a place called Beagle Point. This is a place that is the furthest you could possibly go from a starting area. It is so far out that most people will never see anything out there, and there's nothing out there but planets and stars. That said, the journey is worthwhile. It's like a mountain I'm climbing. Meanwhile, I'm taken with breathtaking vistas and the knowledge that in some cases, I'm the first to discover a planet or a star. My name is on it. I can scan and chart those places and leave my mark on them, which makes the trip feel like it's not just a destination. Meanwhile, in WoW, I cannot stand the constant running to and fro, only to have to rely on the awful drop rates for items I require to proceed in quest progress. I understand that some of the world is large and interesting. However, as stated, if you're me, I'm just following someone around. There's no quick way until 40 when you get a mount apparently, but that's just reducing, not removing the friction, to travel between places in an area. I truly feel like I'm playing a walking simulator. I will walk from Goldshire to a tower in the distance, talk to a guy, then walk all the way back. If I die, I have to hoof myself all the way back to my body unless I want to pay a penalty. The game insists that I spend an exorbitant amount of time just going from place to place, only to spend time doing monotonous tasks. This is probably when we should tackle the other side of the coin, questing. I've done various quests in games across my life. WoW's questing has to be one of the most boring things I've ever done in a video game. This is exacerbated by the awful drop rates that again are required to proceed. The typical structure in the game is 1. Talk to an NPC, get basic dialogue. 2. Travel long distance to location. 3. Begin fighting enemies 1 or 2 at a time. And then 4. Objective is usually A. Kill 10 to 15 out of them. B. And even worse, collect an item from their corpses. I cannot tell you how much time I've spent across the hours I've played killing enemies in the game for them not to give you the item you need for the quest. Apparently, though, this is an expected outcome. Jiff and I, coming from Final Fantasy XIV, couldn't believe how long some of these tasks were taking. Bastion was confused at the 66% being contentious, but in our experience, drop rates like these were optional content that were usually for a limited number. This was happening on a majority of quests we were going on. Something felt like it should take 15 minutes was often taking 45. And what's more, for Jiff and I, it would build resentment when someone in the group would get the items they needed far before us. There would be often instances where one of us had to collect 15 things, only for one person to finish and the other was still on 6 or sometimes less of the item they needed. To elaborate a bit, the quest styles seem to condense down to 3 styles, as I've mentioned. 1. Talk to a person or deliver an item that is given to you, to that person. 2. Kill X number of a specific enemy. 3. Kill a specific type of enemy for a number of dropped item based on RNG. Let's quickly compare this to Final Fantasy XIV and what I am personally accustomed to. I talk to an NPC. NPC explains what we're doing and why. It could be a meeting, it could be killing things, it could also be killing things for items. But the items are almost guaranteed to drop, and the number of them is limited to 3 to 5 maybe. However, there's more quests than that. Perhaps you need to search an area for a person or a thing. Perhaps you need to collect an item from that area. Maybe you need to search for a person and find them under attack. You commence combat once you enter their area. Then you get dialogue from them that they may either just thank you or direct you to the next location. There are more, but the point is the various tasks do 2 things. They give you flavor, Again, to keep things varied, but also to do environmental storytelling. I find myself getting more engrossed by someone say, hey, find that priest, searching for said priest, only to find them under attack and you just barely saving their lives. They then have info for you about what comes next. Pair the travel time with the lack of engagement and the bland quest structure, and you get a recipe for frustration and malaise. If I were to simplify this into a statement, it would be that WoW has you completing basic tasks, whereas 14 quests facilitate communicating purpose. So there you have it. Without having some long, overly drawn-out conclusion, all I can say is I'll keep playing, at least until I reach the end of my subscription. I still have to experience dead mines. Leveling up more would be good. WoW's philosophy is from top to bottom just things I don't appreciate. I don't think another talent point or other dungeons are going to change the core of what I'm feeling. World of Warcraft Classic isn't failing at what it's trying to do, but what it's trying to do is things I really don't value. It wants the journey to be the draw where I prefer purpose. I wanted it to really engage me in a new world I could share with friends. I just wish I could see the same things in the game that others do, but I think I really have to accept that it's just not for me. Till next time.